Good afternoon and welcome to Finding the Plot. My name is Sebastian Whittington Smythe, and today I'm looking at a game that many of you may have heard of, Shin Megami Tensei Persona 4. The obvious theme of this game, for those of you who have played it, is overcoming your inner demons and using them as a source of strength. But if it was that simple, would I have spent the past 4 months playing this at the expense of GTA 5? Of course not. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy as we find the plot of Persona 4. We begin with a fancy car moseying through a foggy night. Where they're going, nobody knows. Why they don't invest in better headlights, nobody cares. The important thing is that there are 2 people inside it, Igor and his beautiful bit of crumpet Margaret. Gosh, she reminds me of another Margaret I used to like. They welcome you to the Velvet Room, and I know that I'd like inside her velvet, never mind. Igor says that you've got an interesting destiny and explains that the Velvet Room exists between mind and matter, etc. It's at this point that I misread the naming requirements and called myself N. Sebastian. Oops. Anyway, Igor gives you a fortune reading and says that a catastrophe is imminent and that there will be misfortunes and mystery, and that you will enter into a contract. At that time, you will return to the Velvet Room. Don't worry, baby, I won't be missing that date. Igor then assures you that his and Margaret's job is to assist their guests to make sure they don't die, basically. The game cuts away to a boobtacular drinks advert, followed by a news report about a political affair scandal. The public discuss it, believing everything they hear, as our hero, N. Sebastian, rides the train like a brooding pallet of man steak simmering in a wok of determination and secrets. Hot, hot secrets. He's been transferred to a new school while his parents are away on business, so has to live with his uncle and cousin. So far so opaque. What's going on? What is the Velvet Room? Well, think of the Velvet Room as our hero's mind. Igor and Margaret are 2 aspects of his personality. Igor is the devil on his shoulder, a trickster. He fuses our personas, but more on that later. Margaret, on the other hand, is a curator. She is his sensitive side and remembers the personas so that he can call on them at will. Again, more on that later. Our hero is something of a sociopath, or at least a bit mental, a theory given weight when you look at his official name, Yu Narukami. Now here's something interesting about his name. If you look at it as a mixture of Japanese and English puns, the name Yu clearly sounds like you, whereas the prefix Naru means to become, and Kami is Japanese for God, so therefore his name can be seen as you are becoming God. Something like that anyway. Here we have someone whose name, for lack of a better description, is full of self-belief. Perhaps he doesn't have a messiah complex or believe that he's God, he might just be a very naughty boy. But he does seem to believe that the world revolves solely around him. He's going to a new place, making a new start and assuming an identity of the player's choice, hence why you name him. Think of Igor in the Velvet Room as Narukami's own mind, deciding that he's got a year in a new place and saying, okay, what do I want to be? He seems like the sort who likes to project certain personas to others while keeping his true self hidden, which I guess is why the game isn't called Honesty Quest. Narukami is still on the train and gets a flash of somebody being attacked and glimpses of Igor and Margaret again. That somebody is the television presenter who is having an affair with the politician. Anyway, Narukami meets up with his uncle Dojima and cousin Nanako. The introduction is quite short.
Let's see, I'm your mother's younger brother, and that about sums it up.
And to save you all time, here's Nanako's highlights.
Oh, welcome back! Yeah!
While Dojima is all, I thought I told you not to hang around the crime scene, look after Nanako cause I'm a working man. Basically. When they get home, their meal is interrupted by a phone call asking for Dojima to attend a crime scene. This leaves Nanako and Narukami alone together, and while nothing really happens, it does set a few thematic seeds. Nanako always has the TV on, and she is easily influenced by what she sees. As shown when the Juness advert comes on.
At Juness, every day is Customer Appreciation Day. Come see for yourself and get in touch with our products. Every day's great at your Juness.
Every day's great at your Juness.
But the news also shows that one half of this affair scandal, Mayumi Yamano, has been taken off the air until the allegations have been resolved. The public are believing and acting on personal details reported about others without any real investigation, which becomes quite important as the story progresses. Narukami goes to bed and dreams of a foggy landscape. As he runs through it, a mysterious voice asks him if he seeks the truth. He reaches the door and is confronted by a shadowy figure. He battles the figure, who passes comment on his interesting qualities. The figure mentions that everybody sees what they want to, and then it departs. Essentially, the last line is pretty handy for a sociopath. It's justification, permission. People see what they want to, so why not give it to them? The next morning, on the way to school, Narukami witnesses a student crash his bike. This is Yosuke. Narukami assesses the situation and then leaves, the cold sod. At school, Narukami's class is buzzing about the prospect of a new student. Narukami is introduced, and the only notable thing about this scene is how obsessed the teacher, Morooka, is about the kids' sex lives.
Long as I'm around, you students are gonna be pure as the driven snow. This town is miles away from your big city of perverts and assholes in more ways than one. You'd better not even think of getting involved with the girls here, let alone abusing them.
At the end of the lesson, there is an announcement that the students must not leave the class, and that teachers should attend a meeting. This section is basically foreshadowing character development. We're introduced to the tomboyish action girl Chie, the clown Yosuke, and the prim and proper Yukiko. These three kids will be involved in your party throughout the game. We're also shown how it's too foggy to see what's going on outside, which coincides with dramatic events, something that becomes a staple of the game, and we also see how Narukami tends to just observe his classmates, rarely speaking except when it's time to say a suitably generic statement. On the way out of school, a strange student asks Yukiko out, and she declines, which she takes quite badly. Yosuke tries his luck and is also shot down. The girls take Narukami for a tour of town, presumably enamoured by his emo singer good looks, and also drawn to his natural charisma. They run into a crime scene where spectators are lamenting that they were too late to see the deceased body hanging from a television aerial. Dojima tells them off for hanging around, and his subordinate, Adachi, runs out of the crime scene and throws up. So to summarise, a new kid starts at school, and on his first day there's an impenetrable fog and somebody shows up dead in mysterious circumstances. The next day, Yosuke crashes his bike again, and this time Narukami helps him, and is therefore rewarded with a free dinner which Chie invites herself to. Now, it certainly seems like it's taking a long time for anything to happen. This is about an hour into the game and you've not even done anything yet. But it's important because you're seeing the world through Narukami's eyes. He's learning the motivations, history and characteristics of his classmates just as you are. He's getting to know what makes them tick so that he can use this knowledge later. You see, Persona isn't just about fighting monsters, it's about using people's traits to your advantage. Chie explains about a rumour she's heard about something called the Midnight Channel.
You ever hear of the Midnight Channel? You're supposed to look into a TV that's switched off, alone, exactly at midnight on a rainy night. While you're staring at your own image, another person will appear on the screen. And they say that person's your soulmate.
So they resolve to test it that night. At home, Dojima puts the news on, and a girl called Saki Kanishi is being interviewed because she discovered Yamano's body. The news interviewer drills her with questions, and then...
A tragedy that occurred near the local shopping district. Many store owners are raising concerns about losing customers as a result.
If they lose more customers, it'll be because you're making such a stink about it.
Again, the media is being shown as a harmful influence, twisting information to a damaging form. And of course, Nanako, too young to care about the news, is drawn in by something else.
Every day's great at your Juness.
Every day's great at your Juness. Hey, Dad, can we go to Juness together sometime?
That night, Narukami tests out the Midnight Channel, and when he gazes upon it, he takes another turn and hears a voice in his head.
I am thou. Thou art I. Thou art the one who opens the door.
He touches the TV and... The next day they discuss what they saw on the Midnight Channel, a girl with brown hair. They think that this girl is their soulmate based on the urban legend, but neither of the others got sucked into the TV like Narukami did. This reminds Yosuke about his store's TV department, and so he brings Chie and Narukami to have a look. While there, Narukami touches the TV again and his hand goes in, freaking Chie and Yosuke out. While they panic, I'd like to take this opportunity to point out that although I'm really skimming through it, the writing and voice acting is really good, and the characters are well-rounded and interesting, meaning that even an hour into doing precisely nothing, the game is oddly compelling. Anyway, they try to pull Narukami out, but end up being dragged into the TV. They plummet and they die. Actually, no, I got that wrong. They land in a foggy area inside the TV and try to work out what's going on.
I think my butt's cracked now.
Of course it is!
Ha! That was funny.
Ow!
The group decides to explore and happens across a creepy bedroom in which Yosuke pees. Aside from Yosuke's piss, the room also has posters with their faces cut out and a noose hanging from the ceiling. They decide to head back to where they entered and bump into this guy. His name is Teddy, and he's a teddy bear who lives in the Midnight Channel. The guys bicker with him for a bit, and then he lets them out of the TV. The next day, it's revealed that Saki Kanishi has died. The team quickly realises that Saki and Yamano died in the same way, and that they both may have been on the Midnight Channel before they died too. Yosuke recalls that Teddy said it was dangerous to be in the Midnight Channel while the fog was in the real world, and that people had been thrown into the TV. Emphasis on thrown. These people were Saki and Yamano. They had been murdered. Fired up by this revelation, Yosuke asks the other two to accompany him into the TV to investigate. This time, they lower themselves into the TV on the end of a rope held by Chie's manly arms, but when they go through, the TV cuts the rope and they fall. Inside the TV, Teddy confronts Narukami and Yosuke, accusing them of throwing the victims inside, but they manage to convince him otherwise. Oh, and Yosuke rips Teddy's head off too. Well, that's just disturbing! Teddy asks them to find the culprit and gives them hipster glasses to help them see through the fog. Narukami then does this. See? He's a total psycho! Anyway, they explore and find a hellish version of the shopping district. While there, they get attacked by these things called shadows. Narukami calls out his dormant power, Persona, and an hour and a half in, it's time for actual gameplay. The main way that combat works in the game is that you summon personas with different strengths and weaknesses, and use their special attacks to get the better of the enemies. It's a bit like if a psychologist made Pokemon. Upon witnessing his strength, Teddy basically falls in love with Narukami for his badassery, and they track Saki's scent to the liquor store. While there, they hear voices of people judging Saki for working at Junes. Inside the store, it gets worse, and they discover that even her family resented her for working for Yosuke's family. Even Saki herself despised Yosuke, and only treated him nicely because she worked for his father. But suddenly a shadow Yosuke appears, and it's revealed that he is the physical manifestation of his weaknesses, his failings. It turns out that Yosuke is actually fed up with life, and he only puts on a happy-go-lucky exterior because he's terrified of being alone. Yosuke denies his true nature, and so the shadow attacks him.
You're not me! You're nothing like me!
So this shadow Yosuke is a lizard with a big hands for crushing what bores him and a huge fake smile. When it's defeated, Yosuke realises that in this world the only way to defeat his shadow self is to accept it. He has to admit his weaknesses, that his shadow is him. By doing so, his shadow becomes Yosuke's persona. He has obtained the facade used to overcome life's hardships. This is the obvious message of Persona 4. Do not run from your demons, accept them, and use them to become stronger. But there is more to it than that, as stated earlier. For instance, Yosuke and everybody else who has a persona has to overcome their inner demons to obtain it. Yet Narukami just pulled his out when needed, and he can use whatever persona he chooses. Why? Well, these personas, these shadows, are born from guilt or regret, from an area of their psyche that they're ashamed of. A sociopath doesn't tend to show guilt or empathy. It makes sense then that in this world, Narukami has nothing to confront. He manufactures his own personas for different occasions, to charm other people. There's nothing deep down to face. But remember, the persona is described by the game as a facade. And what is a facade? It's a deceptive outward appearance. These guys obtain a new defense against the world, a defense born of their acceptance of their flaws. But the power of persona is cool. I wonder if I have a persona. Persona! Oh, very funny, yes. But I said persona, not fursona. Now the internet's going to think that I'm turned on by people in animal costumes and animal cartoons having sex. Come on, show you my persona. Oh yes, the persona is repressed. Oh, and that's... No. It's not true, I'm not like that, honestly. Guys, don't believe a single thing. You are not me. Well, I won. And I now have the power of fox perversion. That was worth it. They speculate that the areas formed in the TV world appeared because the people who were pushed in imagined them and it became their reality. As if what was in their hearts took physical form. They decide that if anybody appears on the Midnight Channel, they will save them and catch the killer. And now a question from Teddy. If shadows were born from humans, then what is Teddy from? They just dismiss him as being a douche and go home. What nice people. Later that night, Yukiko is on the news after having been made manager of her inn following her mother stepping down temporarily. And funnily enough, when Narukami next looks at the Midnight Channel, it's Yukiko who he sees. When he goes to bed, he enters the Velvet Room and is given a key so that he can enter it at will and hone his skills on the condition that he takes responsibility for his actions. Now, as he's becoming God, he probably does take responsibility for what he does, takes pride in it, and this sequence indicates that he now knows enough about the people around him to have some fun. He's told that the persona that awakened is a side of himself that shows itself when he faces the world around him. This persona is a wild card, empty yet holding infinite potential within itself. The next morning, Narukami bumps into Yosuke and they have a chat which initiates a bond between each other, forming his first social link, the Magician Link. Social links are at the heart of Persona, and why I consider Narukami a sociopath. Now, what is a social link? Well, as far as the game is concerned, certain characters can be interacted with, and they have their own story arcs that you play through almost like a dating sim. You pick the responses they want to hear, and that strengthens your bond. The stronger the bond, the stronger the personas of that arcana are when you create them. And if you want to get on with these people even better, you equip a persona of their matching arcana. So let me put this in real terms. You play as somebody who interacts with only the most useful people. You tell them what they want to hear to charm them into being of use to you. You assume a totally different persona when you're with them to what you do with other people, and you do it purely for selfish reasons. And when you've got everything you need out of them, you never speak to them again. No, seriously. Once the social link is finished, even if you want to, you cannot have a meaningful interaction with most of the social link characters. You use them to make you stronger, and that's it. Narukami is charming but has lots of superficial friends. He clearly doesn't care about anybody, not really. At the beginning of the game, he mostly observes his new classmates as if working out how to exploit them. He's seen Yosuke's greatest secrets, and so knows how Yosuke's mind works. And now he knows that, he's able to form a bond purely out of convenience. You can already see that people are drawn to him, and everybody who forms his group is holding a deep insecurity. He is a charismatic person who draws the weak to him and influences them. If they fall in combat, it doesn't matter. If he falls in combat, the game is over. Yes, the story progresses in a save-the-world kind of way, so Narukami can be seen as a hero. But does he really care about his friends in the world, or is he just using them so that he can succeed to prove his superiority? Okay, this is getting far too long, we haven't even got anywhere yet, so time to summarise. Yukiko appears on the Midnight Channel dressed quite saucily and hosting a dating show where she gets to have the hottest guy to herself. They go to the Midnight Channel where Teddy wonders about stuff and acts all cute. It turns out that Yukiko is indeed in the TV world and her mind has manifested a castle. They establish that there's no camera crew, but everyone in the real world can still see what's happening on the TV. Through the castle, they hear Yukiko's thoughts about how she feels worthless and praises Chie for being everything she isn't. This spawns a shadow Chie who basically reveals that Chie was always jealous of Yukiko's beauty but loved being depended on. The shadow attacks,
You're not me!
and falls, granting Chie her persona. The next stop is Yukiko, who deep down hates being prim and proper and wants to score a hot stud, hence her dating show style world. She wants to be saved by a prince and even considers Chie a prince just so long as she can be pulled away from her forced destiny of running the inn, of being the Yukiko Amagi that everybody wants her to be. Her shadow is a caged bird with a prominent heart on its breast. So they defeat the shadow and continue on with their investigation. While all this goes on, they hang out with Nanako, who is still obsessed with Juness because of the TV adverts. Their next ally is Kanji Tatsumi, who is something of a street thug who doubts his sexuality. He becomes famous when he heckles a news crew, and when he's in the Midnight Channel, his world is that of a gay sauna. While investigating Kanji, they happen upon this strange young man.
You've given me plenty to think about. Thank you.
And then there's Rise Kujikawa. She's an idol who has retired from the public eye, but when she appears in Inaba, of course she attracts the local press. She has body image issues, hates her small breasts, and wishes deep down to be highly sexualized, so she turns into a pole-dancing flower face thing. The team battles her, but it's just not working, so Teddy steps in and blows himself up to save the team. There's something immensely disturbing about flattened Teddy. To paraphrase, Rise says that there is no real her. She merely possesses many aspects: the slut, the idol, the daughter. These are all versions of her, but there is no one definitive Rise. Hearing this gives Teddy an existential crisis, awakening his shadow. His shadow mocks him for denying the truth and suppressing it to live in a life of ignorance, that Teddy is too dumb to know what he really is. The shadow Teddy says that the world is full of fog.
How can you find something when you know not what you search for? Obtaining the truth is simple. All you have to do is believe that it is the truth.
This is an interesting philosophical concept that fits with the themes so far seen in the game. Everybody has a true nature, their shadows, and they can only be whole when they accept it. Yet Shadow Teddy argues that there is no real truth, because the truth is simply whatever you choose to believe. Look at Narukami. He gains people's trust by acting as they want him to. They never see his true self, but because they believe in him, they think that they do, and therefore they trust him. That Teddy's shadow argues such a salient point about Narukami is quite interesting, but more on Teddy later. Shadow Teddy attacks, and it's probably the hardest fight in the game, but I'm awesome so I defeat him. This unlocks Teddy's persona and he decides to rest until his fur regrows. While this has been going on, Dojima and Adachi are no closer to solving the case, which is making Dojima grumpy, but at least people aren't dying. Oh wait, yes they are! Oh, look at that corpse, me and my big mouth. Before we get to talking about that, I suppose I should address something I'm sure Persona fans are screaming at their monitors. That while I keep saying Narukami is a sociopath, he doesn't do anything negative to his team or friends. He just maintains shallow friendships. Lots of friends, but no real friends. Nobody knows anything about him. And it's true, he doesn't murder his friends or hurt them, but he does use them, and does so by exploiting his knowledge of their weaknesses. And as for the Midnight Channel, I think that if this game were made now, the Midnight Channel would be a website. The Midnight Channel to some extent represents the damaging effect of the media, news stories that people believe implicitly. It's a realm where people bear all of their darkest secrets for the world to consume. When Persona 4 was made, this could be seen as reality TV, but now in the age of Facebook and Twitter and even YouTube, people bear far more of their true self, their darker natures online. Near the end, the Midnight Channel is used as a form of trial by media, and everything broadcast is used by Narukami to become stronger. So while he never does anything bad per se, the structure of the game, its languid pace and desire to show just as much socialising and day-to-day grind as it does drama, allows you to become familiar with not just the characters but also the situations that you never see elsewhere in gaming. By going on a school trip or watching friends making dinner, it begs you to consider the weird juxtaposition of the two themes, fighting to save the world and going to school. Spending time with friends, cultivating relationships that are heart-rendingly deep on one side and yet ultimately shallow on the other. You're seeing these children bare their souls to the public so that this stranger can become their saviour and gain their loyalty, use them as a source of power as and when he sees fit, knowing that in a year he will depart without a care in the world. Is he not a textbook sociopath? And does anybody stop to wonder if this is right? Is that what Persona 4 is? A meditation on broken social norms that invites sociopathic messiahs due to the oversaturation of personal information in the new, more pervasive media? Bear this in mind as we go forwards. So, this upturned corpse is none other than the teacher, Mr. Moroka. His death is a shock to the Scooby Gang considering that they saved Rise. They go to Junes to discuss it and find Teddy in the real world, enjoying a chair massage. It turns out that he was curious about the real world, so decided to come out and see what it was like. They ask him if anybody else has come through the TV, and Teddy is positive that nobody has. They try to work out what to do with Teddy, and Yosuke decides that he can become a mascot for Junes. While they discuss this, Teddy complains of being really hot, and, well...
Whoa! What the?
Please excuse me while I go and reevaluate my sexuality. So, Teddy has grown a body. Neat. From now on, Teddy is a charming, charismatic, genuine, caring, honest guy. He's the opposite of how Narukami is portrayed, basically. While investigating Moroka's death, they bump into Naruto, who they bumped into earlier on. Basically, he's investigating the murders and has a few questions for the team. What this leads to is the revelation that Moroka was killed by a copycat killer. The next time they watch the Midnight Channel, there's a boy on the screen. They realise that this guy's been seen around quite a bit. He appeared to be stalking Rise, he asked Yukiko out on a date, and had opinions about Kanji and even Yamano's affair. This paints him as an obvious culprit. His world is a video game called Void Quest, showing how he thinks the whole situation is nothing more than a game. When they find him, he's pleading with his shadow to acknowledge him for murdering the deceased. His shadow, for his part, feels nothing. This guy, Mitsuo, wants to be acknowledged for the murders, to be credited, so that he can fill the void inside himself. He hates being nothing, he wants to feel valued. When they defeat him, he gloats about performing the murder, so they take him in and call the police. So he did all of this because people talked about it over the media, fitting the classic stereotype of a troll doing something to get a reaction from everybody, which is arguably becoming more common now that the media has such a far reach. Kanji even talks about it when discussing the school trip.
Like that Mitsuo Kubo dude. They're still showing him on TV here. Every time I switch on the tube, the news is showing, like, what he wrote in his yearbook. Pisses me off, man. The freaking media's slapping together anything they can find to make the dude look like a born criminal. People think they can say anything they want about a guy who's been branded a criminal. It's just not right. I mean, I still hate the guy's guts. But I don't know. After getting involved with all this, I started to realize how off-base most rumors are. It's so messed up.
So they go on a school trip, and Naruto joins them in a bar and asks them about their involvement in the murder case. There, a supposedly drunk Yukiko explains about the TV world, and Naruto thinks that they're mocking him. It seems Naruto has doubts about Mitsuo's guilt. The next person on the Midnight Channel is Naruto, because he's been featured prominently in the case as the detective Prince during the investigations into the murders. This makes them realise that perhaps they hadn't caught the killer after all. They find Naruto in his secret lab and discover that his main problem is his insecurity of being a child, and in being a girl. Yes, Naruto is really a girl, and hates that she cannot be seen as a decent detective because it's a male-dominated industry. When Naruto attacks, his gender bending is represented with a flying cyborg. Obviously. So Naruto comes to terms with her gender and unlocks her persona. This confirms that there is another killer, a suspicion that Dojima has, and which is revealed by Adachi. While waiting to see what happens, Naruto decides that the gang should have a medical evaluation to see if the TV world has had any effect on them. While this is taking place, she mentions that she researched the shadows and persona.
A shadow is suppressed power, and when controlled by one's ego, it becomes a persona.
You know, sometimes I feel like the games are doing my job for me. Time passes and the guys take part in a cross-dressing contest, which Teddy totally aces.
Give me your hearts!
That's a boy? He's so cute!
Oh, I wonder what the internet thinks about Teddy's cross-dressing. I don't know what to think anymore. He decrees that the girls have to take part in a swimsuit contest, and isn't there a law against this sort of thing? Oh well, Naruto refuses to take part and thus wins, so I guess that's a victory for common sense at least. Following even more hijinks, the news reports that a thick fog has become more and more common in Inaba, and people are concerned about the health effects. Nanako is mentioned on the news as giving an inspirational quote, and so no prizes for guessing who appears on the Midnight Channel. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Narukami gets a letter telling him to stop what he's doing or someone close to him will be put in and killed. This angers Dojima, who takes him to the station for questioning. Naturally, Dojima doesn't believe the story about the personas in the Midnight Channel. This means that Narukami is still in the interview room when it turns to midnight, and sure enough there's Nanako on the channel. Naruto rushes to the Dojima household to find Nanako missing. They reason, through standard Japanese detective logic, see the ring or death note, that the kidnapper must be a delivery driver and hit upon it being Narumatame. It turns out that he's been driving around with a TV in his truck, throwing people into the Midnight Channel. Dojima is chasing him and crashes, and Narumatame escapes into the TV for safety, along with Nanako. Nanako's Midnight Channel world is heaven, but as they ascend it becomes darker because she's with Narumatame. Narumatame insists that he's saving the people he puts into the TV, not killing them. He says that he saved the others and won't relinquish Nanako. He says that the people who need to be saved appear on the Midnight Channel, so he puts them into the TV. He believes that if they don't go into the TV, they will die. In fact, he thinks that the gang chased him and Nanako to kill them. He eventually releases Nanako when Kanji and Yosuke attack, and she passes out into Narumatami's arms. Narumatame demands her back and he transforms into this.
We've come this far! We're not losing now!
This peace-loving god-baby thing is called Kunini Sagiri, and it insists it's saving Nanako. Once it's defeated, they take Nanako to the hospital where she remains out cold. Time passes and the fog gets worse in the real world, causing widespread panic among people. The group finds a news story about Narumatame which neatly wraps up all of the murders into a satisfying package. Narumatame is still in a coma in hospital, but everything certainly seems to be dealt with. The main issue is, of course, as Adachi points out, that his story is so crazy that the charges may never stick. And then Nanako dies. Yup, just like that. Naturally, Dojima is pissed and he goes off to kill Narumatame, who's being kept in the same hospital. Meanwhile, Teddy mopes over his inability to save Nanako. Dojima fails at getting to Narumatame, but his distraction allows the kids to get in and confront him. As they do, the Midnight Channel comes on and Narumatame appears on the screen. They didn't actually battle his shadow, they battled the man himself, and so the shadow is still in there. He says that he failed to save Nanako, The kids debate killing Namatame by throwing him into the TV, but Narukami tells them to stop because they don't understand what Namatame was doing. They're missing something important. Meanwhile, Teddy mopes around in a misty netherworld that isn't the Midnight Channel. When Narukami goes to bed, he goes to the Velvet Room and is asked if he can solve the mystery. The answer is yes, and Igor shows him people who are committed to helping, reinforcing how loyal his followers are. The kids debate Namatame some more and realise that something's not quite right about him, how he said he had saved Yukiko and the others, so it doesn't make sense that he wanted to kill them. And as he said he failed to save Nanako, who died, then maybe he was trying to save them, so perhaps there was another culprit. They review the warning letters and realise that if Namatame wanted to save, why would he threaten to kill somebody close to Narukami? He couldn't have written it. They go and question Namatame and learn the truth, that he didn't put Yamano into the TV. He saw her on the Midnight Channel and tried to reach out to her and his arm went into the TV. The next day she died. The next time he watched the Midnight Channel, Saki appeared. He wondered if she was in danger like Yamano, so tried unsuccessfully to warn her, and of course she also died. He called the police, but they didn't believe him, so he decided to try saving whoever he saw on the Midnight Channel by throwing them into the TV. He reasoned that whoever appeared on the TV would be in danger, and seeing as the police didn't believe his story, he would try and save them himself. He thought it would be safe inside the TV world, so he put people in as a way of getting them away from danger. Sure enough, everybody who he put inside survived, so he believed that he was correct. Oh yes, and Nanako isn't actually dead. It turns out they revived her, but she's still in a coma. Yay for Deus Ex Machina. Eventually, Naruto decides that the culprit had to be somebody who could get both close to Yamano and Kanishi without raising suspicion, and who would be in a good position to observe the Scooby Gang. And that person is none other than Adachi. They confront him in the hospital, and when the questions get too much, he hightails it into the TV. That night, Teddy comes to Narukami in the Velvet Room. He talks about how he realises the truth about what he was, that he was a shadow who didn't want to be a shadow anymore. He gained consciousness and wanted to be his own thing. Narukami soothes him, and Teddy wonders why he found Narukami in the Velvet Room of all places. And here's where I have another weird theory of my own. My theory is that Teddy is Narukami's shadow. Think about it, Teddy was a shadow, and Narukami never had to confront his. The shadow is usually the suppressed nature of the person, and usually it's a bad trait. But considering that Narukami is a sociopath, then his empathy and positive traits are those that are suppressed. What if Narukami is so detached from those traits that his shadow no longer has a connection to him? If the shadow is no longer bound to its host, then what? Does it gain sentience of its own? When Teddy uncovers his own persona and grows the human form, what shape does he take but something that is near enough the complete opposite of Narukami? Narukami says little, shows no emotion, has dark hair and has a conservative brooding stance. Teddy is cheerful, almost flamboyant, cares about everybody and has an almost opposite colour palette with his blonde hair and white clothes. Teddy is the one who is hardest hit by Nanako's death, and he worships Narukami. When he goes away, where does he go but to Narukami's own mind? It's a thought, especially when, if you consider the beginning of the game, when Narukami first sees the Midnight Channel, the lights in the background match Teddy's colour scheme of red and blue. The group goes to the TV to chase Adachi, but the fog is too dense to find him, so they head back to the real world to work out what to do next. Meanwhile, in the real world, Teddy is watching over Nanako, who wakes up and says that she heard Teddy's voice and everybody else's too. This inspires Teddy, who rejoins the gang at Junes. This time they find Adachi in the first area they visited, the room with the noose, mauled photos and Yosuke's pee. It turns out that Adachi threw Yamano into the TV. He had a thing for her, but because of her affair, he lost his respect for her and threw her into the TV to make her pay. He also put Saki in for struggling. Basically, he wanted to force himself onto both of the women and put them into the TV when they resisted. When he received a call from Namatame, it was perfect. He suggested Namatame put people into the TV just for his amusement, to keep the case going, because he could. He even put Mitsuo Kubo into the TV too, just to keep the case going. Again, Adachi is another character exhibiting a mental defect, a terrible character flaw. I'm no psychologist, but he seems something of an anarchist. And it's revealed that the Adachi that they're speaking to isn't even the real one, but a decoy sent to greet them. Apparently, the TV world likes Adachi, and the shadows don't attack him because he has the same ambitions as they do. By the end of the year, the fog will consume the real world, and the Midnight Channel will become reality. When they catch up with Adachi, he denies ever killing anybody. He says that the world kills them. The world kills them, and the world reflects people's thoughts. So surely society kills them. He says that he made a mistake when he was a young police officer and got demoted and sent to Inaba. He was so bored there that when he discovered his power, he decided to cause problems to see what would happen, nothing more. He rallies against the world's nature to praise those born with talent, while everybody else just exists, and so he is happy for the world to be destroyed. He is eagerly awaiting a world filled with shadows, ignorant to their mediocrity, equal to each other, satisfied. With his arguments still ringing in their ears, he summons his persona, and is defeated. This causes the creature that has been possessing Adachi this whole time, Amino Sagiri, to reveal itself. It says that mankind has desired a peaceful world and that that's what mankind is going to get. It says that the Scooby Gang did a good job of whipping up the masses into a frenzy, but that's all going to come to an end and the world will become a world full of shadows. Sagiri says that its destiny is to shepherd mankind to their desires. Mankind wants peace, but it could never be attained, so they tore down the walls between image and reality, and that's what mankind wants. It explains that the Midnight Channel is an extension of mankind's desires. Humans see things as they see fit. They do not wish for the truth, but rather prefer the undesirables to be hidden in fog. And yet humans feel what they cannot see. It's a blatant contradiction. The desire people have to see the unknown pierces the fog and upsets the shadows, hence why they attack whoever is near. Sagiri says that mankind abandoned its pursuit for truth, preferring to place itself in the depths of chaos and falsehood. This has given Sagiri strength to create a fog that will not lift. It was Sagiri who bestowed upon them the power to enter the TVs, and thus into the hearts of society. It refers to the Midnight Channel as a world filled with desires viewed through a window from which one sees what one wishes to see. So what people saw on the Midnight Channel was what humanity as a whole wanted to see, but the images, the behaviour wasn't always how the individual truly felt, but how society wanted to see them. In the case of Namatame, this was true because the group, and indeed society, wanted to see him as the killer. It had to be him, it was too perfect, so this Namatame exhibited those characteristics. The only thing that Sagiri didn't count on was the group's ability to best their personas and use the negative power as a strength. So, did you get that? The Midnight Channel is a reflection of mankind's desires to see what they want to see, and to hide or ignore any uncomfortable truths. It's designed to show them what they expect, what they want. They wanted Namatame to be the killer, so he was portrayed as a killer. When the public was thinking about Rise after her exposure on the news, or Kanji or Yukiko, they were the subject of the Midnight Channel. But the behaviour they exhibited was shown because mankind wanted to see, was hungry for the negatives. It's like how the media takes a hot young star and builds them up just so they can tear them down. They prey on the negatives in their hearts and draw them out so that the public can see them be destroyed. This is what they want, and so that's what Sagiri gave them. The kids, when in the Midnight Channel, bared their souls, perhaps unwittingly, but they were used to further these voyeuristic desires. Like I said before, if the game was made today, the Midnight Channel would be a website, because now, more than ever, this is exactly what's happening. The public is hungry for car crash tweets, exploitative YouTube videos, and tabloid web stories that air people's dirty laundry. That's what the public wants, not thought-provoking, intelligent discussion about important stuff. That raises uncertainties, and those uncertainties cause problems for the vocal majority. And while this happens, people like Adachi look on, amused at the chaotic circus, and sociopaths like Narukami take what they've learned and pick up the pieces of those who have been exposed so that he can use them for his own purposes. The only difference between real life and Persona is that there isn't a godlike power trying to change the world into what it thinks mankind wants. So Amino reveals its true form, a giant all-seeing eye. How apt. Sagiri says that it's useless to fight it and it goes against the world's wishes, which, might I add, is another sociopathic tendency, to go against societal norms. When Sagiri is defeated, it acknowledges the group's power and says it will leave for now, but when humanity desires it, it will return. So really they've accomplished nothing but to postpone the inevitable. And so, with that said and done, they hand Adachi over to the police, and Nanako makes a recovery. Narukami says goodbye to everyone, and that's it. That's just it. Time skips forward until March, and Narukami goes home without a care in the world at the people he has lost. They all seem sad, but then they've lost their charismatic leader. And so, after all this time, what was Persona 4 really about? It was about how screwed up society has become. Every character is deeply psychologically flawed. The ultimate Armageddon is essentially an intellectual Armageddon fueled by media that prioritises the simplistic desires of the masses, an unchallenging dirge of easy targets, TMZ and Fox non-news, designed for people who don't want to deal with the uncomfortable unknowns, so they become shadows, unthinking creatures that just exist. Meanwhile, people bear all through media, showing the darkest secrets to a world hungry for the car crash public meltdowns facilitated by, in this case, reality TV. Our villain is an anarchist who just wants to see people suffer, while our hero is a sociopath who takes the weaknesses of others and exploits them to gain their loyalty so he can gain followers to keep him amused and gain an advantage for a year just before he goes off and does something else. And the cleverest thing about the game is how it never makes a big deal out of these themes. They're there and nobody really notices. They're just accepted. And I think that's kind of the point. And when you look at it like that, Persona 4 doesn't paint such a rosy picture of mankind and its intellectual and psychological ambition and health. But at least you've got me challenging those boundaries, and if that doesn't work, there's always booze. Or perhaps I've been talking bollocks this whole time.